the first address is given by James Hewes, CEO, Public Relations and Communications Association, PRCA UK. James started his career in media working at BBC Worldwide in their publishing house, the BBC Magazines, for 12 years. He then moved on to Gulf News Publishing and was the interim CEO for the art newspaper while also running his own company, Soho Consulting. He was president and CEO of FIPP from 2017 till 2023. He helped reposition the 100-year-old Media Trade Association as a business focused on learning, knowledge sharing, skills development, and networking. In January 2024, he was appointed CEO of PRCA, the world's largest and the most influential PR professional body. Today, he will speak about what led to PRCA becoming the awesome association that it is. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome James.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everybody. I was worried about coming on stage after lunch because I've sat in plenty of these conferences and I know what it's like after lunch. You sit there and you go, yeah, this is interesting, but I'm falling asleep. But we're not going to fall asleep now thanks to our fantastic volunteers and the fabulous dancing they did. Give them another round of applause for all the work that they've done this week. So, as was said, I'm here to tell you about the PRCA. We are the largest and most influential PR association in the world, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we got to this place and what the future holds for us and what we think the future holds for the industry. I won't spend too much time talking about myself because I've just had that fabulous introduction, but the main thing to say is that I've spent 6.5 years now in trade associations, longer than that associated with them on boards and so on, and really I'm here to focus on how we take the PRCA to the next level, how we continue to consolidate this position as the leading association of its kind in the world. And just to give you an idea of the scale of the PRCA and what we do, our main focus is companies, our main focus is agencies. We represent an enormous number of audiences, as well as agencies, in-house professionals, individuals, public affairs professionals, academia, but crucially we have scale. Sarah mentioned earlier that we have 100,000 communications professionals in the UK. A large proportion of those are members of PRCA, and when you add that to our global reach, we have a unique position in the market. We are 50 years old. We were founded in 1969 as the Public Relations Consultants Association, and over the course of the last 55 years or so, we've grown to this incredible preeminent position. So I'm just going to unpack some of the different aspects that relate to that. In the 1980s, we were instrumental in the founding of ICO. Many of you will have heard of ICO. Greg, my colleague from ICO, is on stage next to talk about that fantastic organization. And that really was the first step in us wanting to become part of a global community because this profession is one of the few that transcends boundaries. We created a CMS system in the 1990s. That's the first step into standards and the codes that govern the industry. This is something that's a common theme that you'll see running through the organization, as I'm going to talk about in a bit more detail later on. And then over the course of the last 14 years or so, we've been led by my predecessor, CEO Francis Ingham, who unfortunately passed away last year. But during his time in charge of the PRCA, it doubled in size. Now, coming from a trade association background, I can tell you how difficult that is. It's a fantastic achievement. During that time, we launched businesses in the Middle East, in Dubai, and in Singapore to serve the APAC region. And so I've joined at the beginning of 2024 to an organization that is in incredible health, with incredible strength and great global reach. What does that global reach look like? So in the UK, we represent all of those different audiences, but we now have these businesses in Dubai and in Singapore doing the same thing. And our challenge is really to take the value proposition that we've built in the UK and extend it across these other regions around the world. So, why do we exist? What is our purpose? You don't have to read all of this, but this is taken from the Articles of Association, which govern the rationale and the reason and give us our direction for our existence. And I really want to just draw your attention to the first line in the first bullet point there. Setting professional and ethical standards for members, operating as the arbiter of those standards. That goes to the core of what we do. We are here to determine, in conjunction with the industry, what the industry considers to be best practice and quality, to set codes and standards around that, and then, crucially, to enforce them. So throughout all of the activity that we do, and the reason that we've become preeminent in the position that we have in the world is underpinned by our basis as the organization of standards for companies and professionals that operate in this space. So how do we do that? What are the actions that have underpinned this success? Well, I would argue that there are 5 key areas that any trade association needs to do, and these are the ones for us. We have a big role to play in knowledge, sharing knowledge, learning from the industry, playing best practice back to our colleagues and peers across the industry, taking learnings from other industries such as the media sector and bringing them to our network of professionals. Linked to that is networking. We want to make sure that we have the ability to connect our members to that one crucial person or that one crucial company that might make a difference for their organization. We have in the UK a program called Matchmaker. Matchmaker matches agencies with brands. In other words, helps them to win business. Putting ourselves in the middle of the pitching process is the best networking that we can possibly do, and it's a crucial driver for membership. Related to knowledge is the formalization of knowledge through training and accreditation, ensuring that the professionals who come into our industry and want to thrive in the industry have the means to increase their skills and therefore develop their careers. That goes hand in hand with our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, making sure that people who perhaps come into the industry from different backgrounds, who don't have tertiary education, but are incredibly talented, have a pathway to professional success. And they can do that through our training programs. I mentioned standards, public affairs, standards, policy, representing the industry on topics that are important to them, and then the close relationship to that is promoting the industry and the virtues of the industry to key stakeholders across the world. So what are the factors that have driven the growth of PRCA over the last 55 years? Well, I'm going to highlight 4 of them. We're going to talk about them in general terms, and then at the end, I'm going to talk about some specific examples that relate to live issues that are going on in the industry right now. So those 4: relevancy, standards, insight, and credibility. So let's look first of all at relevancy. Now, as we know, public relations, communications, public affairs, the creative industries generally are moving at a pretty fast pace at the moment. So we have 2 jobs here. The first job really is to understand and reflect concerns and opportunities that members might have relating to that pace of change, but also to anticipate member needs. And I'm going to slightly embarrass Sarah by calling her out and saying, we did a strategy session over the last couple of weeks where Sarah was talking about PRCA as being the home of the agency of the future. And that, I think, is the core of relevancy, making sure that we understand the future and that we're able to reflect it in our work. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that we know about, that you know about as well, that's going on at the moment that we have to be relevant for. Globalization, the rise of artificial intelligence and new technology, the changes in the nature of the way we pitch and win business. And reflecting those contributes to our relevancy. The second one is insight. Insight is about being able to understand the industry, to take advantage of the macro view, the unique macro view that we have as a trade association. Trade associations have 2 crucial advantages in this space. Number 1, they're impartial, which means that we're not looking to take one member's side over another. We want to represent the entirety of the industry. But the second thing is we have a commitment to a degree of confidentiality, which means that members tell us stuff that they wouldn't tell a trade magazine or they wouldn't tell their peers. So being able to take that insight and package it up, crucially to create and own data sets that give insight to the industry is really, really crucial. Relating to that is then feeding that back into the training programs that we have so that those always reflect the latest skills requirements of the industry. We don't want to, as we say, fight the last war. Was that me? When I move my head. I won't move my head so much. We don't want to fight the last war, we want to fight the next war. And crucially, we also want to be able to reach out to government. Having insight gives us the tools and the data to make our case to government and to other key stakeholders in the right way. What's the fundamental purpose of this insight? The fundamental purpose of this insight is to enable our members to make better decisions. With the right insight, you can make a better decision. I mentioned standards earlier. Standards is the underpinning of everything that we do, and we take our role as the guardians of standards for the industry very, very seriously. Those standards have two formal aspects and one informal one. The two formal ones are our codes of conduct. We as an industry have codes of conduct that our members sign up to in the UK when they become members of the PRCA. These codes of conduct dictate how we want to operate as an industry. And crucially, they're set by us as industry professionals. They're set by our members. So it's the members and the industry as an outward expression of how it wants to behave to the rest of the world. That's backed up by a very robust complaints process, an independent complaints process. It's so independent that if a member is being complained about, not even I know until the complaint is finalized. And that gives that code of conduct the credibility that it needs in the industry. Now, related to that, we have CMS. CMS is our management standard, which is designed to cover the business aspects of how an agency or a company operates in our space. In other words, to provide that trusted mark of quality around the specifics of the business operations that they carry out, covering not only the core disciplines in our sector, pitching and winning business, executing business, but also things like HR and finance, so that when somebody comes along and wants to engage that agency on business, they know that they're operating to a required standard. Supporting all of this is an enormous network of volunteer boards and committees, and we are extremely lucky in that alongside our relatively small professional staff at the Trade Association, we have an enormous number of people, that number literally in the hundreds, who are volunteering on these boards and committees, and together they help us to determine what these standards should be. A good example, we're just about to announce, or I think we've just announced, the launch of our new Global Advisory Board, and our Global Advisory Board will be headed and chaired by our friend Nitin, who's here in the front row. Give him a round of applause. That ensures that the standards that we're setting don't just reflect UK best practice, but they have a voice from the rest of the world as well. And then finally, there is credibility. Credibility is basically about ensuring that we are the home of the trusted global community for public relations, public affairs, and communications. Everything we do contributes to this sense of credibility, and it's a key driver for a number of members to join and remain with us. They like being part of a community that sets standards, they like being part of a community that is professional, and it gives them the reassurance that their business is adhering to the same standards of those of their peers. But of course, the other factor in that is being able to go out and promote our industry to those key stakeholders who make a material difference to our business, whether that's brands, whether it's governments, whether it's other regulatory bodies. We're able to go in and say, hey, we are the voice of the industry. There can be no doubt about that. So what does this look like in practice? And I'm going to use two practical examples here. The first is the policy battleground. Now, this applies across the whole of the creative industries. We in public relations and communications have our own unique challenges with all these aspects, but the fundamentals are the same. There are basically 5 big policy battlegrounds, legislative battlegrounds that are being fought at the moment. Privacy and data, copyright, competition, disinformation, which was mentioned earlier today, and AI, which has been mentioned in pretty much every presentation. And the problem that we have is the problem that most industries have. We're standing at the side of the stage. I'm going to stand, look, see what I'm doing, standing on the side of the stage, whilst 2 very big blocks fight this out between them. On the right-hand side, there is governments and international institutions like the European Union and the US government. And on the left-hand side is the big tech platforms, to which you can add OpenAI, which is not on that list at the moment, although now part of Microsoft, of course. And they are fighting between them with, on the one side, the interests of the consumer, and on the other side, the interest of those businesses. And the fallout and implications of that can be considerable for us and for our industry. Think about artificial intelligence. Think about the answer that is spat out by Gemini when you put a search term in. Now imagine that that answer is wrong. And imagine that answer relates to one of your clients. What's your client going to do? Why is the answer wrong? Fix it. Well, at the moment, there's no mechanism for fixing it. This battleground will determine our right to for example, fix errors and omissions and get compensation for that for our clients. So it's crucial that we have a say in this, and it's crucial that we don't just do that from a technocratic point of view as the trade association, but that we represent the views of our members in doing that. So those boards, those committees, those professional bodies, those professional groups made up of volunteers give us the policy positioning that we want to take on all of these issues, so that when we go out to governments, when we go out to market, some of these we do ourselves, some of them we do in collaboration with other organizations like ICCO, like ICO, which you're going to hear about in a minute. We're representing the industry's view. A second example, artificial intelligence. I loved what Sarah said yesterday about people standing up on the stage and telling you whether AI is good or bad, and basically being wrong. We, at the moment, are not really concerned with whether it's good or bad. We're concerned with how it's being used. So the role of a trade association in this case is, I would argue, to do two things, both of which we're currently doing. The first is to help our members understand the importance of setting principles around the use of artificial intelligence and recognizing, as was said earlier, that most members at the moment are small or medium-sized businesses, recognizing that they don't have the resources to develop those principles necessarily on their own. So giving them examples that they can use, giving them off-the-shelf toolkits that they can use themselves in their businesses. 5 minutes to go, thank you. And those cover all of these different areas. I'm not going to read the list out, but you can see them all there on the screen. The idea being that we as the trade association can do some of the thinking for you, saving you time, saving you money, helping you to be better businesses. So what does the future look like for PRCA? If you think about all the things that I've spoken about, I think the future is built around three new core values: integrity, inclusion, and innovation. Let's just think about what each of those means. Integrity. We want to continue to be that beacon for trust and standards, and that should underpin our work across the world. Inclusion. We want to build a positive industry culture that goes to all of the points that were mentioned in the previous presentation, where the industry is open and accessible to all, and the pathways for growth in the industry are also open and accessible to all. And innovation, where we continue to be the center for knowledge and to understand the challenges of the future. And crucially, we want to do things fewer, bigger, better. So it may seem counterintuitive, by doing less things, less activity, we can actually make each of those things more significant and make it more valuable for our members. So I'm just going to close, I've got 3.5 minutes left, with the three challenges that we're going to focus on over the next few years. These are three of many, but I'm just highlighting three because we don't have enough time to do the rest. The first is the one that we wrestle with as an industry since the start of the industry. What is our role in businesses? What is our role in brands? How valuable are we? I find it, as a newcomer to the industry, fascinating. There are hundreds of thousands of people and billions of dollars invested in this industry every single year, and yet we ask about the value. The value comes not only, of course, in the monetary value, but in the human value, and that's the thing that we want to focus on. The infinite stories of success that happen every day in our industry, where an individual made a difference to a business's success or a business's story through their work as a communications professional. So showcasing that to enable us to go in and talk with confidence about the value of our industry. Secondly, inclusivity and talent, supporting all of the things that were mentioned earlier today, all the challenges that Sarah highlighted that we want to meet. As I said earlier, making sure that we are open and accessible to all, that the pathways are open and accessible to all, and that that reaches right from the schoolyard to retirement. And then thirdly, the challenge of AI and technology. Understanding that principles piece, but then linking that also to best practice use cases. Who is getting this right and who is getting it wrong? And we don't care whether that comes from our industry, it could come from another industry. But let's make sure as the trade association that we're at the forefront of finding that best practice and highlighting it. And if we do all of those things right, and we continue with our international expansion, which we want to do, we will continue to be the preeminent organization of our kind across the world. Organizers love it when you finish early, so I've got a minute to go. I'm just going to say, Thank you for listening. If you want to reach out and contact me, I would love to hear from you. I'm here for the rest of the day. Here is my email address. The one thing you can do from today, please support your industry association. If you're here based in India, please join PRCAI. They are our sister organization. They do great work in the industry. If you would like to join us as an international member, we would love to have you as well. Thank you very much for listening and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Hi, James.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Suhani, an aspiring public relations student from SCO. So my question is, you have been in this field for 25 years and you have worked with various top brands and now PRCA. So what made you stick to it, public relations, and what excites you the most about PR?
Well, that's a great question, and one I asked myself quite a bit when I joined and took the decision to join. I spent 20 plus years working in media. And look, I use the term creative industries deliberately.
Yes.
We are all one creative industry, whether it's media, public relations, or communications. One of the interesting challenges that we're wrestling with at the moment is where does one begin and the other end?
Yeah.
The scope of things that we're all doing is increasingly becoming very similar. From a personal point of view, I felt, therefore, that it was very interesting to jump the fence and come to this side of the industry where there's an enormous amount of vibrancy, talent, also innovation that's happening. As a more kind of pragmatic reason, media is declining, public relations and communications is growing, so it's nice to be part of a growing industry and a successful industry. From a kind of macro point of view in terms of the association, I think there's a lot that each industry can learn from the other, and I think one of my jobs is to help, as I learn about public relations and communications and fully accept that as a newbie I don't know that much, one thing I can do is hopefully bring my knowledge and expertise of media to this world.
Okay, one more question.
Sure.
Any advice you would like to give to us, young PR professionals?
Well, you've done it today. You've volunteered for this. Volunteer for everything. That's always the best advice. It's a cliche, but it is absolutely true.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's, it works, right? If you sit in an organization, any organization, who wants to do this, put your hand in the air. You'll have to do some, pardon my French, some shit jobs, but after that,
So,
it really pays off.
thank you.
Thanks. James, thank you for that and for giving everybody here a view of the PRCA and how it's grown. A quick question or quick observation. You talked about policy and the empire is going to be a big issue which the association will grapple with. And you mentioned two big blocks of the EU and the US. But one big piece which we're missing is the global south, or the voice of the global south.
Yeah.
And is there something that the association is doing or plans to do to have a voice in that global south?
Yeah, definitely. It's a great question. I think the global south will be less of a policy background, but more of an innovation background. And if you think that innovation leads to policy, I mean, when we look at our global expansion plans, we have an enormous number of members joining at the moment from Africa. Joining unprompted, we're not really doing anything, but they're coming to us, and they're coming to us for all the reasons that we've shown there. I know from my past experience that the great thing about globalization has many downsides. The great thing about globalization is that as everybody starts to do everything in the same way, innovation can happen anywhere. And I think our job is to go out and find those pockets of innovation. I remember last year I went to a creative industry summit in Rwanda. The first time I've been to Rwanda, fascinating country. I was literally the only guy from Europe in the crowd. And hearing all these fantastic stories of creative innovation and success from the African nations that were represented, both West and East Africa, just reinforced that view, that we do not know where innovation is going to come from. Our job as a global association is to go out and find it, play it back to the industry, and make sure it's reflected in policy. And yes, a large portion of that will inevitably come from the global south.
Thank you.
That'll be it, James. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get up for James.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.